Just before we come on to today's webinar, I wanted to give you a quick update from Sheffield Chamber. We continue to work closely with all the regional chambers, along with the British Chambers of Commerce, to collate feedback around any issues or concerns that local businesses are facing with regards to accessing the government's coronavirus support packages. And this information is being fed back to Whitehall directly from the BCC. If you are experiencing any problems, have any questions or concerns about anything related to COVID-19 or any sort of business support, then please do not hesitate to get in touch with myself or another member of the Chamber team. And finally, a reminder that as Chamber members, you have access to a suite of essential business support services, such as the 24/7 legal, HR, health and safety, tax and PAYE helpline, where you can speak to fully qualified legal and compliant advisors about everything, and it's all been updated with COVID-19 business support too. The online portal has also been updated with lots of downloadable documents that will be useful during this time. So if you do need reminding of any of your logins or passwords, usernames for the online portal or to access the helplines, please contact me after the webinar. So moving on to today's webinar, Marketing Your Business During COVID-19. I'm delighted to be joined by Ash Young, Managing Director at Evoluted, an award-winning digital agency and patron of Sheffield Chamber. Ash will offer his expert advice and guidance on how to effectively market your business digitally through this pandemic and beyond. Having co-founded Evoluted in 2006, Ash's passion for the digital world and obsession with client satisfaction has since helped the company grow into one of Yorkshire's leading digital agencies. Ash believes in the importance of building long-term relationships that bring shared success. Ash, you're very welcome. So, without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker this morning, Ash Young. Thanks, Ash.
Thanks very much for the introduction, Sam. And I think most importantly, thanks for inviting me here today. Sorry, I'm not coming down with anything. Yeah, so thanks for inviting me here today. I think it's been nice to have something different to do with my day, which is good. I don't know if you're like me, but it feels like everything's just blurring into one at the moment. I'm definitely really looking forward to getting back into the office. And as you mentioned, I'm the MD of Evoluted. We're a digital agency in Sheffield, just down near Kelham Island, and we focus very much on digital marketing. So mainly the topics I'm going to be covering today, but we also have a large development team who are busy building and maintaining websites and e-commerce sites. Thankfully, as an agency, we haven't been really badly affected by the crisis. We've been relatively unaffected, but I'm keen to offer help where I can. So let's crack on. I'm not going to spend absolutely ages introducing myself. Let's just get straight to it. So I want to talk to you guys today about what you should be doing with your marketing during COVID-19 right now. And most importantly, the opportunities that it brings us to realign and reevaluate our marketing efforts. So at Evoluted, we're following many of the suggestions I'm about to outline in this webinar, and I'm going to step through various channels one by one that you may or may not be currently invested in, but just talking about what you should be looking at, what you should be doing. And then at the end, there's an opportunity for you to ask any questions. Obviously, the advice I give will need to be adjusted depending on your industry and how it's been affected by COVID-19. Some industries are obviously booming due to COVID-19, like home improvements, but obviously there's a lot that are struggling. And at the end, yeah, you can ask any questions, but I'm also happy to answer any questions individually. So Sam will be sharing my contact details. We're also going to share a couple of sort of blog posts and various guides that might be useful for you guys at the end. But if you've got any questions, you want to reach out to me after this webinar, then just drop me an email or give me a call. So where shall we start? Let's start with what should be the mainstay of your online marketing, which is your website. So pretty much all your online marketing is going to be pushing people through to your website, either to make a purchase or make an inquiry. And I really only have one piece of advice here, and it really is quite straightforward. Make sure your website is up to date. It is that simple. You need to make sure your website's updated and it reflects the current situation and how you're operating. if obviously you are during the crisis. You want to reassure people that they can still order from you, they can still do business with you. It's really quick to do this, but I see so many businesses making this mistake and not updating their website, and they're not taking the time to sort of make their website reflect the current situation. So I do have an experience with this recently. So I heard from a friend that a local restaurant in Chesterfield was doing delivery during lockdown. Absolute results. I'm over the moon. I mean, food for me is quite a big deal already, but even more so during lockdown with the never-ending days. So I went onto the restaurant's website to find out how to order, but there was no mention of coronavirus. It was as if they were operating as normal, and I could pop in tonight for a table for 4 with the kids and the family, and just have a meal out. It was only when you start to dig deeper, go on to sort of their Facebook and their social media pages, could you actually see that they were offering a delivery service and how the delivery service worked. And when this first launched, they might have done really well, but as lockdown drags on and restaurants don't open for the next few months, they're going to start to lose so many potential customers by not updating their website. And worst of all, they won't even be aware of this because it's something that's not even sort of cropped into their mind. And the fix for them will be really simple. Even just a message on the homepage saying, look, here's a menu on Facebook, click through, go and order. So really simple, make sure your website's up to date. But beyond this, if you can pivot your website to enable you to operate more effectively online, then you really should do so. So another sort of food related example, I promise not all my examples today are food related, but obviously food is a big deal at the moment. There's a place in Chesterfield called Maison Mezzamie. It's a little restaurant down on Chatsworth Road, if any of you know Chesterfield. And when you visit their site, it's the complete opposite of the previous example. It's really clear that they're offering delivery. You've got the full menu right there on the homepage. You can go in, you can choose what food you want. You can pick a date and time for when you want delivery, and then you can just check out and pay. And then the food rocks up, in the evening, and off you go. It's absolutely an amazing experience, and it's going to transform how people do business with them over the next few months and keep a lot of their customers very loyal. And I know a lot of people that have seen this service and have ordered, we're getting into double digits now since they've been doing it for the last sort of month or so. So they're getting a lot of business from this. They're getting a lot of loyalty from their customers. And because they've pivoted their website. And I appreciate it's not easy for everyone to do this. They might not have a website that you can pivot that easily. But if you can, you really should. And at Evoluted, we're seeing a lot of inquiries from people that either want to get online because they're not online at the moment, or they want to change how their website works, or they want to change how they deal with inquiries and automate things a lot more so that actually they don't need that human touch. They can automate a lot of what they were doing with their business. And this situation, I suppose, gives you pause for thought to think about what you could be doing in a more effective manner and more efficiently without someone needing to ring up or pop into your office. Can you do it online automatically? And if you can, you should be looking at that and pivoting your website. Now, I've talked about your website. I'm going to sort of run through the various channels that you might use to bring traffic to your website, which then hopefully leads to inquiries and sales. The first channel we're going to talk about is paid search. So I'm sure some of you know what this is, but if you don't, by paid search, I mean pay-per-click marketing. So typically this would be in Google for most people, because Google's the biggest search engine in the UK. They've got the lion's share of the market. You might look at Bing and others if you're a bit more advanced. But very quickly and brief, you're bidding on a search term and you pay each time a user clicks on your advert and visits your website. So as an example that's not food related from Evoluted, we might bid on SEO Agency Sheffield because we offer SEO services locally. Somebody clicks on that advert, lands on our SEO page to read about the service, and we pay every time someone clicks to do that. For an SEO search term, we probably pay quite a lot compared to a lot of terms, and it very much varies depending on your industry. Now, as you can imagine, when the crisis first happened, we saw a bit of a panic reaction. So many companies immediately just cut all their ad spend. They just stopped advertising in Google, or they scaled it back dramatically. And even if companies didn't turn down their spend, this would have happened naturally due to what happened in the marketplace. because paid search is entirely demand driven. So your ads will only appear if and when people are searching for the products and services you're advertising. So in the first couple of weeks post-lockdown, back in sort of late March time, we saw a massive slump in demand against essentially most search terms. As people, they weren't in their usual headspace. They were panicking. They were panic buying toilet roll. They were cancelling plans. They were essentially entering lockdown, and that was inevitable because people weren't where they normally were. They weren't doing what they normally did. But as we're sort of moving out of that now, we're starting to see a lot of search traffic return. We're seeing a lot of searches that were lost coming back. We're seeing different searches coming back as people are obviously adjusting to life at home. There are some noticeable exceptions that aren't coming back. So things like travel and flights, they're going to take a while to return. So if you're not running paid ads right now, if you are running paid ads rather, I'm guessing you either turn them off or turn them down. But now as the demand is starting to return, it is the perfect time to reflect on what you're doing and reevaluate your campaigns. And the first thing to understand is, like I mentioned, that the supply and the demand has fundamentally shifted, even from just a couple of weeks ago or a couple of weeks ago before that. The effect of the crisis has massively changed the marketplace. So the cost of ads is entirely driven by the market. So the more advertisers that are advertising for products, and the more they're prepared to pay, the higher the cost per click, so how much you pay every time someone clicks. So more people advertising, the more you're going to pay. And since the crisis has hit, huge numbers of advertisers have pulled out of the market, which has reduced the supply and therefore the competition. And in addition, in some sectors, you'll see that actually the demand for ads has surged. So we've got a lot of clients in home improvement, for example, and the number of people that are searching for products to do up their house or do up their garden has gone through the roof because they've got the time, they're sat at home and people are researching. So you've got a lot of demand for these ads and actually got a relatively small supply compared to normal. So in most cases, cost per clicks have gone through the floor. So with that in mind, I'm now just going to step through a couple of things that you can do to sort of audit your paid search campaigns and readjust to essentially what is for the moment the new normal. So the first thing that you need to be doing is running through each campaign. So make a list of all the campaigns you're running, if you are running any, and go through each campaign and make sure that you're only running ads for products and services that people will buy right now or in the next couple of weeks. So we want to focus very much on campaigns that generate immediate returns. If you're advertising products and services that might have a 6-month buying cycle, then perhaps it's not the best thing to advertise right now. If you've got other products that have got a week, 2-week buying cycle, focus on those, because most businesses right now need cash, they need sales now, they need to be thinking short term, not long term, and then gradually turn those longer term ads back on. For sort of bonus points, you want to then go through each of the campaigns and review what search terms you're appearing for. So you can see this quite easily in Google Ads and Microsoft Ads. You can go through and you can see a list of search terms that you're appearing for. Now, importantly, this is different from the search terms that you're bidding on. So you might bid on one search term and Google will show you for another related search term or a longer search term that is completely different. Because Google essentially at its heart is very greedy and wants your ads to show as much as possible so it can get as much revenue as possible from clicks. So you can go into Google Ads, you can export a list of search terms that you've appeared for, and then you can set up what are called negative keywords to turn off the keywords that you don't want to appear for. Definitely worth doing. In most campaigns that we review when clients come to us, we'll see sort of 10-20% of just pure wastage on people that are bidding on search terms that are relevant. And even for some campaigns, you'll get as much as 50%. So a classic example would be if people are making location-based searches and you don't operate, say, in London, but you're appearing if someone searched for London-based search terms, then you want to make sure you exclude those. Once we've run through the sort of the campaigns and the keywords that we're bidding on, we want to then move on and look at the ads themselves. So by this I mean the text of the ads. So when you do a search, what appears in Google and the text that you see. The obvious thing that you need to look at is the text on the ads you're running appropriate? So things have changed since coronavirus outbreak. So You might, for example, be talking about delivery lead times in your ads, which you can no longer meet. So you might have been saying next day delivery if ordered before 2 o'clock, and you've only got people dispatching in your warehouse on Tuesday and Friday now. So obviously you need to update your text so you're not over promising. You're going to meet their expectations. You don't want to sort of over promise it and not deliver. You want to be very clear about actually what you can and can't do. At this point, you also want to run through and make sure that you're using all the features that are available to you. So Google Ads have sort of developed their product over the last few years. If you've been running ads for a long time, the obvious thing is that there's a lot of new fields on particularly ad text that you might not be using. There's also a lot of extensions that you can use to make your ads appear. So things like site links, phone number extensions, location extensions. There's various extensions that you can turn on that make your ad visibly bigger and more impressive in Google and more likely to get clicked on. So you need to go through, make sure all these are turned on. You also need to just have a think about how you're selling your products. So you might be unfortunate and you might be running a business that sells products that people might not want to buy right now. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are affected by this. So for example, if you're a business that sells primarily travel insurance, you're probably going to have a bit of a hard slog at the moment because people aren't wanting to go on holiday. But there will still be people searching for travel insurance. It's going to be less, sure, but there's going to be very little sort of competition in Google, because a lot of the people that we're advertising will just stop because they'll just given up and said, no one's going to buy travel insurance, let's turn the ads off. So for those sort of search terms, the cost per click is going to be really, really low. And if you can actually encourage people to make a purchase, then you should really give it a try. And you might need to think about how you change your product, how you change your offering. So a good example for sort of annual travel insurance might be if I'm searching for annual travel insurance right now, well, I'm probably not going to get any benefit for the first 3 months because it's unlikely I'm going to be able to go on holiday, unfortunately. So get into the mindset of what someone's searching for. So if I want annual travel insurance and I can't get it, I can't use it for the first 3 months, then perhaps you should be offering an 18-month policy rather than a 12-month policy, but for the same price, and making it very clear that you're adding 6 months free on if the user buys now. Make things that really clear and actually encourage them to commit and make the purchase now. And it's really about adjusting your product in that sort of situation to make sure that you're offering value and someone can commit now. There's other ways of doing this, such as getting people to sign up to email lists, newsletters, following you on social media, signing up for something to get a discount code, well, whatever it be, make sure that you try to capture that detail for the user now. If they can't buy now, then they come back and you can encourage them to buy later. Once we've been through that and we're happy with sort of how our campaigns are all set up, we're going to slowly start to turn them back on. So what we want to do here is start slow and steady. We want to turn the budgets up, turn the campaigns on one by one, and monitor and review. We want to make sure that we're getting the return, basically, because what we're going to see is that in some industries, the intent, a campaign that might have worked really well, the intent of the people that are clicking on those ads might have changed. Actually, they might not be buying, thinking of travel insurance, for example. They might just be researching what they want to buy when they can go on holiday or they can go away. So we want to turn the campaigns on very slowly. So we're going to run them at a much reduced level until essentially we've got enough data. So we might want 100, 200 clicks that we can look at and say, well, actually, we were having a 10% conversion rate before all this kicked off. We're now down at 5%. How can we either get it back up to 10% or do we just reduce our cost per click? And it might be that your cost per clicks are down anyway. So you're roughly paying the same per conversion, per inquiry, per sale that you were previously. Happy days, it's just a different normal. But it might be that you need to pause or reduce your cost per clicks to make the campaigns effective and make them as profitable as they once were. And conversely, you may be in one of those industries where actually you turned everything off and there's still a demand, there's more demand than there was, there's less competition. You may find that your conversion rate has gone from 10% to 15, 20%, and you're doing really, really well. In that case, you then need to start to think about how can you maximize your return? Can you put more budget into the campaigns that are working really well? Can you adjust the cost per click so you're getting a bigger share of the market? Whatever it is, you need to then adjust and slowly tweak your campaigns as time goes on. And the important thing here is that this is going to continue to change as the situation develops. So as lockdown restrictions start to be lifted or not, then users' habits are going to change dramatically. So if Boris Johnson goes onto TV tonight and says that, hey, guess what, guys, lockdown is going to end on Monday, search habits are going to change like that. And you need to be really on it, paying attention to what's happening in the news and making sure that you're reviewing your campaigns, reviewing what you're advertising, and that you're reacting to what's happening in the world. So at least you want to be checking in every couple of days to make sure that they're still performing, but also keeping an eye on the news and what's happening in the world, and then either reacting immediately when you hear something's changed, or making sure you check in every sort of day or so after that to make sure that there's been no sort of adverse effects, or if there's additional potential that you could be going after. And as we ease out of this, you're going to see it slowly return to normal. So as we ease out of lockdown, it'll take a while, but in 12 months' time, I think a lot of ad accounts will look similar to they did 6 months ago. But it's going to be a long process to get there, and you're going to have to stay on top of things to make sure that you come out of that in a profitable way. Now, I'm going to move on. I'm going to stay with search engines, and I'm going to talk about our next channel, which is organic search. So you might hear this referred to as organic traffic. You might also hear it referred to as SEO traffic. It's basically the traffic you get from search engines that you don't pay for. So you're not paying every time a user visits your website. And if you've invested in search engine optimization before, you're essentially trying to increase the organic traffic you're receiving from the search engine. So you're trying to increase your ranking positions, get yourself higher in Google or Bing or wherever for those important search terms. And really, really importantly here is that it isn't a paid media. So you don't have to pay every time a user visits your website. You may pay an agency to help you get higher or get more traffic, but you're not going to pay every time someone clicks on that listing in Google and comes through to your website. So at times like these, organic traffic could be an absolute lifesaver, because essentially you're bringing boatloads of users to your website without having to pay for them. And that is absolute gold. But there is some bad news. So if you haven't already invested in SEO, and you don't get much organic traffic right now, then you're unlikely to be able to change anything significantly in the next couple of weeks. Improvements to your positions in the search engines and your organic traffic, it's a long-term game. It takes months and months for Google to understand the changes you're making and for you to tweak and evolve your site over time. So I'm going to talk about a couple of things that you can do right now that will have a little bit of impact. And then I'm going to talk about some things that you can do now, if you've got the time, that actually will pay dividends in the coming months and years. So the areas that you can look at immediately to reassure users is very much about sort of brand searches. So if anyone searches for your business in Google at the moment, you may be familiar with this, but you get a business panel on the right-hand side on desktop, and on mobile, you'll get a little business panel at the top of the results. So if I did a search for one of our clients, a Hookstop, an ice hockey store, you'll see their details on the right side, or you'll see them on the top on mobile. It's basically business address, name, reviews, some photos, opening hours, things like that. But you get the ability as the business to go into Google and update all that information. You can change it any time through Google My Business. So it's really important that you go in and make sure that that business entry reflects the new normal. So basically it's got all the current details in there. So you might only be opening reduced hours, you might have changed your opening hours. So just go through, make sure your opening hours are up to date, and make sure telephone numbers, contact details are up to date. So you might have changed your telephone number, for example. So make sure it's all up to date. But then you can also have the ability to add little sort of like posts. So they're called posts, they're called like little status updates essentially. So you can add a little image, a bit of text, and maybe a link out. These used to appear underneath the profile, but Google's actually moved them to the top in the last couple of weeks. So they're a bit more visible, so people can share what's happening around coronavirus more easily. So if you think about the restaurant example earlier, they could log in, make sure their details are up to date, and add a post saying, hey, we're open for delivery, with a picture of their food, which then links through to their menu so you can start the process of ordering. So it's really simple, reassures people straight away in Google that, yeah, we're open, and makes customers' lives easier because actually they go straight from Google straight to the menu to order. It's really straightforward. So make sure that you go and do that. if you don't have access to your Google My Business profile already, if you do a search for your business, there'll be a little link there that you can click to claim the listing. It'll just take you through a little wizard in Google where you can basically prove that you own that business, and either they'll give you a call to verify and tell you a code you have to enter into the screen, or if not, they'll send you a postcard, which will take a few days, and then you get a postcard with a code on, which you do the same thing, enter it into the screen, and then you've got control of that listing and you can update it as you want to. The rest of my advice around SEO is really sort of a long-term game, and it's something you should be doing to make the most of any downtime you have. Now, I don't know if you're like me, I'm hearing a lot of people talking about changing their lives and improving their lives during lockdown. So either they're learning a foreign language or they're getting fit with all the free time they've now got. But I think obviously the people who are making these statements don't have kids. I've got less time than I had before. But if you are one of the lucky ones that has more time, then very much I think where you should be focusing your time is on your website's SEO, because this is going to pay dividends in the years and months to follow. It's just going to pay it forward so much. So first of all, we want to go back to what we were talking about before and actually do a bit more of an in-depth job. Do a bit of a content audit on your website. So we want to go through your website and make sure that all the information on your website reflects the products and services you sell. So it's quite common to see that someone will launch a website, you launch a website as a business, really excited about it, really pumped, yeah, I've got a new website, it's amazing. And then you forget about it for 2 years because you've done that, tick. And when you go back to it 2 years later, you realise that you haven't got all your products on there, or you haven't got your latest services on there. So you really need to make sure, go through, make sure the website reflects actually what you're selling and the service offering that you've got. Make sure everything's on there. And when it is, then go through each of the products and services and make sure that you're describing them in the best way possible. So a big mistake on e-commerce sites that you'll see is that people just drop in the manufacturer's description. So I'll get it through in a CSV file from the manufacturer and just copy and paste the product description into the website. That's ultimately lazy. You can do better than that, and you should do better than that for your customers. You can describe that product in a way that's really engaging and draws them in, and also offers you huge amounts of SEO value, because Google really likes that type of content. If you've got the same content as everybody else, then you're not going to rank above them in Google. So make sure the website reflects your content and make sure you've improved it as much as you possibly can. Now, moving on from the content side of things, you may have had an SEO audit done by an agency in the past, and perhaps you haven't implemented the suggestions. So now is a great time to dig that audit out and to run through and make sure that you've improved all the things that they sort of picked up on and said, hey, you've got all these pages that are missing copy, you haven't set your meta descriptions, you haven't set your meta titles, your images don't have alt text, whatever it is, make sure you've got the time to run through and improve those areas of the website. If you haven't carried out an SEO audit, then definitely now is the time. There are various tools that you can go out there and go and do sort of a free audit. They'll only go so far, they're not amazing tools. So what I'd suggest is actually getting an agency to go out there and do an audit for you, because you can't beat professional advice from someone that knows exactly what they're doing. At Evoluted, we're actually offering free audits at the moment, and I'll pop a link in that Sam will share at the end. So if you're interested in a free audit from Evoluted, then get in touch and we'll have a run through your website, and one of our guys will come back to you with the advice as to what you should and shouldn't be doing right now. And that advice will be actionable. So a lot of it you'll be able to take away and run with yourself. So very much worth doing. We're happy to help people in any way we can at this point. And then once you've run through and you're happy with the content of the website, you've made the sort of technical fixes that you need to, the next area is to then go out there and start producing valuable content. And this is where you're going to start to draw people into the website. So for example, you could look at producing guides on how to use your products, how to measure your products. So for example, if you think one of our clients that's got a great blog post, very niche, so we work with a company called Intelligent Hand Dryers, so they sell and install hand dryers, and they've got blog posts, for example, on what height a hand dryer should be to be installed in a school bathroom. Very niche, but actually gets Googled quite a lot and provides real value. So if you're a handyman in a school, you're like, well, where do I put this hand dryer? There's a blog post that explains how you should figure it out. That sort of content is invaluable. So if you can go out there and think about the types of ideas and types of content that people might be looking for, there are research tools that we'll share at the end that you can go and see what people are searching for. Definitely go out there and start producing this content. Start putting it on the blog on your site. If you haven't got one, now's a great time to get a blog added to your website. And then if you're feeling really confident, start dabbling with video. So you can answer a lot of the sort of blog content as well with video content, which then pop onto YouTube, which also then starts to rank really well in Google. So it adds weight to what you're saying. Video is obviously a lot more involved and obviously isn't everyone's cup of tea, but if you can do video, then it is worth its weight in gold. You've just got to get over that sort of fear factor of doing the first one, and then you'll be up and running. Our head of SEO, Eva Luton, has put together a post that actually runs through all these points in detail, and we'll share this at the end, but he steps through all the points that I've just made in a lot more detail and explains how you should do it with some links and resources in there. So we'll share that at the end, and I think that'll be really useful in terms of just stepping through those and what you should be looking at. Now, I've spent a fair bit of time there running through the SEO side of things and the paid search. Don't worry, I'm not going to spend this amount of time on each of the channels. I've only got a couple of channels remaining, but I wanted to spend more time on the SEO and the paid search side of things, because I think they're the most important areas and the areas that you really should be focusing on right now. There are a couple of other areas that I'm just about to touch on, but really the focus should be on the SEO and the paid search side of things. So the obvious next one is email marketing. So if you've generated an email list prior to the crisis, then similarly to SEO, you're in a great position because actually you've got essentially an owned media. It doesn't cost you a huge amount to email that list and make them aware of new products and services. But if you haven't generated a list and you haven't got a mailing list set up, then it's still actually not too late, but you do need to be careful at this point. There are a lot of companies that are getting this wrong right now. If you're like me, I'm getting emails left, right and centre with companies emailing me statements from their CEO. And who are you, mate? Why are you emailing me? And a lot of them are companies that I've actually never even heard of. And they don't provide any value to the user because it's a long letter that explains what they're doing. And actually, that's not what people need right now. You also need to remember that GDPR is very much still in force. And I'm seeing a lot of people fall foul of this and actually going, we need to get some sales. Let's just email everybody. You can't do that. You shouldn't do that. You can only email people that you've actually explicitly got their permission to do so. So GDPR is still in force, and I think that, you know, in a few months' time following this, there's going to be some companies that are going to get themselves into a bit of hot water because they've not been following GDPR. So if you have permission from people, then that's great. Crack on, email them, but make sure you get the tone right. So very much avoid phrases like these troubling times. I think we're all sick of those types of terminology now. Make sure that you keep the messaging very much on point and promote products and services that you can offer during lockdown, or even just offer advice. So I'm seeing people like hairdressers, they're offering advice on how, you know, cut your hair at home, doing a video on YouTube, putting it on their blog and then emailing it out to all their customers so that they've opted in by their newsletter. Perfect. Ticks all the boxes and actually provides a real valuable service to your customers. It's also just worth considering that you make sure that whatever you're doing is in the spirit of your brand voice and what you would be doing prior to coronavirus. So if you wouldn't have done this before coronavirus, then don't do it now. That's generally a good rule of thumb. Final area that I sort of want to touch on is social media, which I think is obviously a big area for a lot of people. If you were active on social media before coronavirus, then it's probably more important to you than ever, because essentially it's a direct line to your customers. If you weren't on social media prior to coronavirus, then actually a good time to build up those profiles, start engaging with your audience. It's going to take time to bring that organic growth to your sort of profiles, but you've got the time, start posting. But again, it's really important to get the tone of your message right. And as long as you're staying relevant to what you're doing, I think social media would be a win-win. Try to keep, I think on social media, try and keep all your messages positive right now. I think a lot of people need positivity right now, and there's so much doom and gloom on social media, on the news, that anything that's a little bit more positive really stands out and does really well on social media. You also, and this is a really important piece of advice, is you need to be really mindful of the pictures that you're posting on social media. So, an example, I'm quite into my cars, and I see quite a lot of YouTubers in the car world getting quite a lot of grief at the moment. So they're posting videos that they've made pre-lockdown, but they aren't being clear enough in the videos that they were filmed pre-lockdown. So as a result, their audience is kind of turning on them. Their comments are filled with people telling them they're not following the rules, they're going to be reported. And when in fact they are, they're just sort of posting banked content. So it's really important that any imagery or videos that you're posting actually reflect the current situation. You know, don't be posting a picture of somebody in a crowded bar enjoying a drink, because that's not appropriate right now. And actually, that's just going to remind people of what they actually want to be doing and they can't be doing, and bring around the wrong sort of emotions. So very much pick your image really carefully. But social media, if you can, keep the posting schedule up. Don't go overboard. Maybe posting once or twice a day, depending on your market. Some markets you might only want to post a couple of times a week. Very much depends on your audience. But keep up the posting. Make sure that the tone of the posting is right, and make sure that the imagery you're using is appropriate. So that's actually pretty much it from me. Quite straightforward. But before I open up to questions, and this is a little bit cheeky, I just wanted to promote something that I'm doing personally. So I started a challenge to launch an e-commerce site and take it to £1 million worth of sales in just 12 months. And I'm documenting the entire journey in a video series. So in that series, I'm going to be talking honestly about how I'm marketing the business, the channels used, and most importantly, I'm going to be breaking down the costs and the revenue, so you can see for yourselves how it's working. You can see where my sales are coming from, which channels are working, which ones aren't, which ones I might have wasted a load of money on, because obviously a lot of marketing is, it's a trial and error really to work out what does and doesn't work. So I'm going to be launching sort of a video every sort of 3-4 weeks, documenting the process and how I've got on. You can sign up for updates and alerts when new videos are posted on webmonkeyash.net, and again we'll share the link at the end of this, and you'll just get an email when a new episode drops. So the first episode's already out, and be launching the site in the next week or two, and then another episode is going to follow very shortly. But yeah, that's it from me. Back to Sam for questions.
Thanks, Ash. Really, really useful. Just on your e-commerce business, are you still giving yourself 12 months, given what's happened recently?
Yeah, I'm going to do 12 months from when the site launches. So it's going to launch hopefully at the end of this week, and then be 12 months from there. So I'm hoping to launch it on the 1st of May to keep it simple.
Sorry, where do you tune in to watch those updates?
It's webmonkeyash.net. You can just sign up for email alerts, and you'll get an email every time a new episode drops. Okay,
we'll share that as well when we do a follow-up email.
Cool.
So it was really useful, Ash. Just before I come on to a couple of questions that I've got. So Ash is happy to take questions from anybody that's got any. I did say post questions in the box, but given it's a small group, I'm happy if you'd prefer, anyone can stick their hand up and ask a question verbally, or you can just post it in the group to everybody, or you can post it privately to myself or Ash if you want to remain anonymous. So just while we wait and see if any questions do come in, Ash, what would be your advice for somebody who's never done digital marketing, but now obviously rapidly needs to learn how to get the basics of one or more of these things going?
Yeah, I think if you're new to this, I think the big advice would be don't be afraid. This is a great time to dip your toe in the water and see what works for you. With all of it, it's a case of starting slow. So if you're going to start doing a Google Ads campaign, for example, very much start with low budgets as you figure it out. I can share some guides as well at the end with various ways to get into things like Google Ads, etc. But it's very much a case of starting out slow and iterate. Make sure what you're doing is working before you then move on and spend more. You wouldn't go into Google Ads and start spending your entire budget in the first month. You'd want to build up to that and be very clear. The other thing I think is just to make sure you understand what your aim is. So I see a lot of people go into digital marketing and want to market their business and don't really understand what they want to get out of the other end. So you want to understand your ROI. What actually do you need to come in terms of inquiries and sales to make the entire effort worthwhile? If you start there, then the whole picture becomes a lot clearer, because you can see actually, well, I can't do Google Ads because in our market, the cost per click's too high. I can never make that work. Whereas you might realise that actually Facebook's a great opportunity because of the sort of the cost per engagement or the cost per acquisition. It very much depends. So make sure that actually you've got your basics right. You know what your costs are. You know what you're going to get back, what you need to get back in sales, and that'll inform essentially everything you do moving forward.
Another question's coming, Ash. One of the participants asks that obviously everybody is doing digital marketing more or less. How can you stand out from the crowd?
So that's a difficult one. It obviously depends on very much on where you're advertising. So if you're doing it in a visual medium, it's very much about making sure your ads stand out. So on Facebook, it's a little bit different. I don't also think it's very much about standing out. I think actually in a lot of digital marketing, it's about performing. So you don't need to be the winner essentially in a lot of digital marketing. You can be in the marketplace and doing very good business without being sort of the brand champion and the one that everyone knows. Because in things like Google Ads, you need to make sure that your ads are answering the customer's needs. So it's very much about understanding your audience, and that's how I suppose you stand out. You understand your audience, you understand what they're looking for, and you write your ad copy, you tailor your messaging on social media, you tailor your audience to those people so that actually you're hitting the exact people that you need to with the right messaging that actually resonates with them. And that's the important thing. A lot of people who are doing online advertising are kind of doing a scattergun approach where they're not tailoring things effectively. So actually they get then very poor click-through rates, they get very poor conversion rates. You want to make sure that your conversion rates are as high as possible, because it means you can use as many channels as possible because you can afford to do so. So
essentially saying that you don't think that, well, I said the market, also obviously different industry sectors will be different, but that the market's not saturated as such. It's just that people are probably not positioning themselves correctly.
Yeah, precisely. I think there will be some industries where you need to change your stance. So we used to work in online contact lenses, for example. So you could go online, you can buy contact lenses that turn up every month. In those types of industries, people are very much looking at a cost per customer. So they know that if they bring a customer on, that customer is going to be their customer for 12 months, and therefore they can afford to spend £100 acquiring them. And so that goes back to understanding what I said in the previous question about actually understanding what your ROI is, what your costs are, what you need to get back out of any sort of advertising. In those sorts of industries, there is competition, and there is saturation, but it's kind of moved on to cost per customer acquisition. And everything else still applies. It's very much about how can you get people in as quickly and as effectively as possible.
Another question's come in. Google processes the majority of search traffic for organic and PPC, but is Bing worth spending any time on?
So I think Bing is definitely worth spending time on. My advice would normally be to have a go on Google. So what we tend to see is that you'll get to a certain stage on Google and you can't push it any further without the ROI suffering. So once you get to a certain share of traffic, you'll have to increase your cost per click so high that actually it's not worth it. You won't see the ROI. At that point, take a look at Bing and see if Bing works for you. You'll see that in some industries, Bing works really well. In some industries, it doesn't. I personally think it's because of the audience, the demographic of people that use Bing. So I think the people that use Bing are typically the ones that haven't changed the default on their Windows computer. So you've got to think about who would that demographic be. It's probably going to be some older people, and what sort of products are they buying. And some of our advertisers see huge success with Bing because there is less competition, because not everyone does it, because it is only 10-15% of the UK market. So in a lot of cases, it's not worth the setup and the admin costs. The other thing to just remember with Bing is that in Microsoft Ads, you can actually import your Google Ads campaign, which is a great way of getting started and sort of testing the water. So you can get it all set up on Google Ads and then just import it straight into Bing. So there's no sort of setup cost, and you can actually check it's working really well.
Just for clarity, this is all new to me, Ash, as well. Just going back to that question about whether it's worth going over to Bing. Obviously, paid search, it's worth. Obviously, do you only pay if someone uses it anyway? So it's
you only pay if someone clicks, yeah.
So it's worth trying anyway. I suspect
it's worth trying, and the only downside is obviously the more campaigns, the more complexity you've got. So if you've got to manage Google Ads and you've got to manage Bing, you've got to monitor and tweak them both independently. You can set up Bing to auto import from Google Ads. You will get better results if you manage Bing independently, but a lot of companies choose not to do that because it's easier just to import Google Ads, and for the 10% of the traffic that goes to Bing, it's not worth spending hours and days and months managing a Bing account.
Another question in the chat box, Ash. This is somebody asking on behalf of a charity. If your website does not accurately reflect your activity anymore, should you invest in getting that right before going for other digital marketing, or is there anything you can do now?
I think it depends on what the digital marketing you'll be doing is focusing on. So if your website isn't reflective, but actually you want to sign people up to, say, an email newsletter list, in Facebook ads, you can do that without someone ever having to visit your website, because you can take the sign up directly as a lead form in Facebook ads. So it very much depends. If you're going to be driving people to the website, then I think you need to update your website, first of all, to make sure it reflects. If your digital marketing isn't ever going to bring somebody to your website directly, then you might be able to get away with not updating your website for a little while.
Great, thanks. Still got a few more minutes if anybody wants to fire last couple of questions over. Ash, how do you work out if the risk is worth investing in, at the minute during these current climate? Is it worth investing in some of these things? Or is it too risky, or would you just encourage people to do it? Go for it.
I think so. Something like SEO, I think, is worth the investment now, as long as you can afford the cash. You can afford to spend the cash right now. It's definitely worth the investment because you're going to see the benefit, in 6-12 months. For things like Google ads or Facebook ads or sort of any sort of paid media right now, the important thing is to just iterate, start small and build it up. So if it's not working, you've not blown £5,000, you've blown 500 quid. So you can try and see what it's working. And if it is working, then brilliant, turn it up. And if it isn't, reflect on what you've done, adjust it, and then try again. But very much start small and try and build it up at this point. Don't just go, in guns blazing, because it's a very strange market at the moment.
And that was going to be my final question. I think some people can be put off with digital marketing thinking that it's going to be a fortune, paid search with Google. And, I think when people hear the word Google and digital marketing, they think just for the, for the big blue chips. So I know it's difficult, but what sort of minimum budget you'd need to start marketing a particular service or product of your business?
Really rubbish answer here, but I think it depends. It depends on your industry. So, in our industry, for example, for web design, web development, online marketing, we can be paying £10 a click. So every time someone clicks, that could be £10. In some of the campaigns we're running for clients, it can be £50 a click, especially in sort of like healthcare and things like that. But typically most clients should be looking at sort of like 50p to £1 a click for it to be effective. So then you need to start to run your figures. So if you were to get 100 clicks, so it's £100, and you've got a 10% conversion rate, then it's costing you 10 quid for every conversion. Does that stack up? And if you very much want to look at it from a cost per conversion aspect, so you can actually see how much it's going to cost for each customer or each lead, and therefore work back from that in terms of what budget should I look to use. So you might start with realistically £500, £1,000, and then go from there.
So definitely, a reasonable investment to start.
Yeah.
Colin, morning Colin. What is the quickest and easiest way to get an e-commerce site set up? He's hoping the answer is not eBay.
Yeah, so not eBay. So the quickest way, so I think eBay and Amazon come with their own issues because you've got your own sort of optimization to do on those platforms. So if you want to set up on eBay, it's actually quite difficult to get your listings high on the search results because eBay very much sort of prioritizes successful listings. I think the quickest and the easiest way would be using an existing platform. So for example, on the e-commerce site that I'm launching, I built it entirely on Shopify because it's something I can do entirely myself and I can be up and running in a matter of weeks. There's no development really required. It's very much a population and a setup job. So I think Shopify for most people, they'd find very easy to use and they could be launched in probably just a couple of weeks by the time they've set the site up.
Colin, just to add to that, next Tuesday, the 5th of May, we will be running another webinar called The Power of Amazon Selling. Just a bit of an introduction into selling on Amazon. So it might be worth tuning in. So that will be up on the Chamber website in the next couple of hours. So we're sort of going to wrap up there unless anyone's got any burning questions they want to just fire through quickly. If not, as Ash said, I will be circulating his contact details in a follow-up email along with any useful links and documents that Ash has talked about, details about the free audit that is offered. So that would be a good opportunity for you to take. And then obviously you can contact Ash directly if you've got any other burning issues. So I think we'll call it a day there. It's almost been an hour. I hope you've all found it useful. I certainly have. Thanks, Ash. And thanks for giving up your time this morning. Really, really appreciate it. So we've got lots more webinars coming up. So just keep an eye on the Chamber events calendar and social media channels just to see what we've got coming up over the next few weeks. Other than that, look forward to seeing you all again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Thanks, Ash.
Thanks. Bye, guys.